Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the YouTube audiobook series for The Forbidden Truth, written by Abby Matthias. I am Abby Davis, and today I will be introducing Chapter 24. If you missed Chapter 23, links in the description below, along with the two playlists for the first book and this book. And if you are all caught up and ready to go, we will continue on with Chapter 24, Reconnection.
As Nala led me to the bedroom, my head kept reeling about everything that was happening. My family could suddenly see me again, and somehow all it took was for me to recognize them through their facades. Nala had her arm intertwined with mine once more, and I couldn't be happier. Hell, I couldn't even believe this was happening. Even though I was a demon, it was like I got my family back miraculously, and I couldn't be ever more grateful. As I was lost within my emotions caused by the situation, Nala stopped walking as we approached the door and unwrapped her arm from mine. Turning my head to her, I could visually see that she was holding back tears again. From what I remember, she would always hold her breath and pinch her lips slightly before the very action would take place. As of now, her shoulders were not rising from the intake of breath, while her precious lips formed a small line, indicating the pinch. Despite her striking emotions, she pushed through them, walked through the doorway, and sat herself on the edge of her bed. I had to duck and maneuver myself through the doorframe in order to enter the room. However, I closed the door behind me to enclose the area for privacy. I wanted to respect her wishes and create that solitude that she wished to create. When she said that she needed to talk to me privately, I knew there was going to be a lot of questions. Yet I wasn't sure where it was going. All of the questions she had could have been answered in front of Damien as well. He will eventually want to learn about everything also. But the fact that she pulled me aside, rather than asking in front of our child, was still alarming to me. Regardless of my curiosity, I knew this conversation needed to happen between us. Answers were needed in order to fully rekindle what we had, and I wanted to make that happen in any way that I could. So after the door was closed and locked, I made my way alongside my wife and sat down next to her. The bed dipped pretty low when my body was placed upon it, but that wasn't important at the time. Silence was consuming the room as we both stared at the floor for a moment. I didn't want to start the conversation because I didn't know what she wanted to exactly know. So, quiet as a mouse, I turned my head to face her to ready myself. As she felt my stare upon her, she eventually turned her head to me as well, and I could see the tears forming in her eyes. I wanted to cup her cheek with my hand, but I felt it would only make her combust with sorrow. So instead, to compromise with myself, I placed my right hand upon her left thigh. Her leg muscle clenched for a second as she took in my touch, but it relaxed after she gave it a second thought. My hand took up about half of her thigh, and her eyes fell upon my hand for a brief moment, taking in the size of it as if she was memorizing every crease and hair that was displayed upon it. Yet after about a minute, she took in a deep breath and placed her hand on top of mine. Her hands were about half the size of mine. They were actually almost the same size as Abby's, not too small like a teen or toddler's, but big enough to place her entire hand on top of mine without concealing it all. As her hand was gracefully placed onto my skin, her thumb gently started to rub against it as she finally started to speak.
Darius,
She said softly.
do you know how long it has been since we last spoke?
Yes, sadly. A little over 14 years, I stated regrettably.
14 years lost. 14 years without knowing where you went and why. Left to think the absolute worst. Yet now, after all that time, you are somehow here within a demon form. What did you get yourself into that made you this way?
Well, The answer isn't going to be what you expect.
What's going to be expected at this point? I just found out my husband is a tall red demon that has horns on top of his head. I don't care if it's hard to believe. Just tell me what happened.
That at least relieved some of my worries. She knew the results were going to be hard to believe, yet she was going to try her best to understand. So taking a deep breath, I finally confessed my sins to my wife. I accidentally got myself entangled with one of the most evilest entities known to man. Without knowing, I signed a contract with the very devil to cure Damien's cancer.
What do you mean it was accidental?
I mean he disguised himself to be a human. Then on top of that, he twisted his words to make the deal happen. He wasn't truthful about the terms and falsely led me into a binding contract that forever condemned me to work for him in hell.
So you're telling me that your disappearance was because of the devil tricking you into a deal? The very being that tortures people once they die?
Yes. That is the honest truth. I was damned to spend the rest of my days being his dealmaker and do his dirty work within the human world. After that, her tears began to flow again as they trickled down her face, her breath now beginning to hitch as her emotions were finally catching up to her.
You're so stupid,
she uttered. At that point, I grew amazed and baffled that she said that outright. Well, I'm sorry. I truly wasn't planning on this happening. I was trying to do what was best for us.
By signing a contract with some random stranger?
She exclaimed, pushing my hand off her leg. Immediately afterwards, she stood up off the bed and marched in front of me. I still had to stare down at her, but it wasn't as much as when she was placed next to me. But none of that really mattered, because as of now, I saw the woman that I loved sad and infuriated at the same time.
Even if your forsaken contractor wasn't Satan, why would you sign a deal with a random stranger? Especially without a lawyer of some kind present. Your damn brother Alan is a lawyer, for God's sake! What is the matter with you?
I was devastated because of our son's cancer, I exclaimed. I was trying desperately to find a cure, and he promised me that he would be able to save Damien from a horrible fate. Dying of cancer. You can't tell me that you wouldn't have done the same, Nala.
I at least would have consulted you about it before making that deal. What happened to making decisions together instead of separate?
I made that choice for us, to benefit our family. I at least made somewhat of a good choice knowing that Damien lived on and his cancer disappeared. Am I wrong about that? I asked, already knowing the answer.
Along with yourself! Darius, I don't think you understand how foolish you were for doing this to us.
And I don't think you understand why I made the choice that I did. Upon that statement, I stood up as well, getting aggravated at her argument.
I understand you made it in the benefit to help our son, but what were you willing to sacrifice in order to make that happen? Seems that you sacrificed your whole damn life in order to save him.
You know damn well I would have done anything for us. But on the brighter side, it was better to have a dead husband rather than a dead son. At least you could have moved on without me if you really wanted to. You wouldn't have been able to move on without our son. Without a doubt, silence filled the space between us. Tension high as we both were consumed by anger towards the other. Yet her aggression was justified. Her calling me foolish and stupid was the correct terminology to use for myself. Yet, a person's thought process becomes corrupted when it is overwhelmed with the stress and heartache. She had to at least understand that in order for this to resolve itself. So I took another breath to explain myself more and apologize. I'm sorry, Nala. I know that the deal that I made was unjust and asinine. Regardless of the situation, it was reckless of me to sign that contract without consulting anyone. However, I need you to understand how upset I was.
I do understand,
she said, choking on her words again.
You were so obsessed that you spent your days and nights at Grandview. I've tried talking to you multiple times about slowing yourself down and actually being with your family. But you couldn't bear the thought of being by your sick son.
Sweetheart, you are not listening to my words, I said, placing my hands up. I will admit that my behavior at that time was unacceptable. But that was because I was trying desperately to find a cure for our son, our only child that we loved dearly. I wanted him to live. We needed him to live. I still remember the day we found out about his cancer and how distraught we both were. I recall how much of a coward Dr. Robinson was to tell us fully and made me tell you the truth. I still feel your sobbing tears upon my shoulder and begging me to tell you that it isn't true. At that point, all of my bottled up emotions came flooding out. My voice began to crack while my eyes became overwhelmed with tears. My body tense but weak at the same time, remembering back to that torturous day, reflecting on the end of my life. Yet nothing was prohibiting me to stop. So my mouth kept running. Because of everything, I strived to help our son at any cost. Sleep deprivation, lack of eating, blood testing, anything that I could do that would inch me closer to a cure, I did. Not just for me, but for you and for our son. I couldn't bear the thought of placing our 7-year-old child in the ground or in an urn to eternally rest forever. Knowing that we would forever grieve his loss regardless if we had more kids or not. Having that burden on me was too much. Knowing that I was a doctor and had resources that could potentially help drove me to insanity. I was lost in heartache and sorrow. My mind had one objective, and it was to make us a happy family again like we were. I would have done anything to make that happen, especially for my son. He had a hold of my heart, and he still does, Nala. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't think about what I did to you both. Hell, I wasn't even aware if he was still alive or not. Yet without knowing it, I saved him by making that deal. I somehow physically signed my life away and took his place in death. And knowing that he is still here with you today, I can't be sorry about the outcome. I would do anything for you and Damien. I guess that's exactly what I did. I'm sorry for everything I put both of you through. I hate how much pain I have caused you both and dislike the idea that I have been the cause of your immense grief. I'm sorry that your sister has been an ass to you all these years because of my abandonment. I'm especially sorry that she used Abby at Thanksgiving to stab you where it hurt. If I would have been there, I would have punched her lights out, and I don't regret saying that. I am sorry for everything now, and I hope you find it in your heart to forgive me. Once my emotional rant was over, I sat myself down on the bed again and stared at the ground. Tears were now streaming down my face, and my breath quickened. Realizing that I just became a blubbering mess, I began to wipe away the wetness from my face. At least I was trying to. For as I wiped away the left side tears, my wife approached me again and reached to wipe away the right side with her hand. My mind became shocked as I thought she wouldn't want to touch me after finding out what happened. However, Upon peering in her eyes, I saw them sparkle like they once did. Hope was filling her eyes once more, while a slight smile shone itself to me. She looked just as innocent as a young child, naive and tender to what was happening around her. Yet as I stared into her lovely eyes, she spoke.
It's okay, Darius. I'm sorry for accusing you of being insensitive. I know deep down in your heart you have never been, and you always had the best intentions. It clearly shows how much you care about us regardless of how long it has been. Even though you had made that choice and had your features altered, your personality hasn't changed. You're still the man I fell in love with years ago. I love you, Darius, with all my heart. I have always loved you and will continue to do so.
But I'm a demon now. How could you love someone who was turned into a hellish creature? I asked, baffled about her unwavering love.
It's just as easy as loving you as a human. In the end, it doesn't matter what you look like. It's about how you are instead of what you are.
After she said that, she stepped herself into the space between my legs, which in reaction made me form them into a slight man spread. More than what I liked, but I wasn't going to object. Besides that, as soon as she was about in my face, she moved her hand behind my head. Then, with a gentle push, she lowered my head down to hers and began to kiss me on the lips. Despite it being over 14 years, my wife kissed me just the same. The sweetness of honey overflowed my senses, while her tender soft lips caressed mine. A natural smell of her floral fragrance clouded my senses as they started to dim and change to light-heartedness. Feeling Nala upon me was an absolute dream I thought I would never experience again. The warm sense of her touch draped on the back of my head, while the other hand was pressed into my chest. Eventually, I circled my arms around her waist to pull her closer. I needed her against my skin. I needed her touch to consume my skin and convince me that this wasn't a sick dream that I was going to wake up from. This all seemed too good to be true. Yet as she continued to kiss me, my hands trailed down and grabbed her by her hips instinctively. As our passion slowly came to the surface, my brain began to flood with memories. Not just any memories, though. I recalled every sensitive spot she had on her body. How certain actions I made would make her arch into me and flood her senses with arousal. Just remembering her reactions within the moment stirred the feelings of pleasure within my gut. Yet I knew well that I wasn't going to go the full mile with my wife. It was technically prohibited. I was dead, and she was a living human. Even if I wanted to, which I do, I had no protection and wasn't about to impregnate her with a hellspawn. So knowing that, I broke the kiss between us to remove my temptation. Upon the abrupt pull away, she pulled her hand back down to my cheek and began to rub it with her thumb.
Why did you stop?
She asked gently. Nala, it isn't that I don't want to. It's just, I'm a demon now, and you're human. This love is technically forbidden, and I don't want any mishaps to happen. I'm sorry. Just at that occasion, I heard something land on the carpeted floor, and it made both of our heads turn to it. Peering down at the left of me, on the floor, a random condom laid. Not knowing where it even came from, Nala backed up as I straightened myself to approach the condom. As I stepped to it, I bent down and picked up the golden foil off the ground. I didn't know what to say about it, to be honest. I had no clue where it came from or why it was suddenly within my grasp. Yet before I could think upon it more, I heard my human's voice vocalize within my head.
I'm assuming you found my little present to you and your wife.
Immediately hearing the voice, my eyes grew shocked while I took a sharp intake of breath. Abby? What in the world are you doing? I asked out loud.
Based on your current thought that you had about wanting to have sex with your wife, I figured I would hook you up.
How the heck were you able to hear my thoughts? I asked, perplexed. You were never able to do that before.
Darius?
Nala said, intruding.
Are you somehow talking to Abby?
I nervously clenched my hands together and squinted my eyes in shame. I forgot that my wife had no clue about the kind of abilities I had as being a protector demon. And as of right now, I was having a one-sided conversation with mid-air. Yes, we didn't get that far into talking about my changes, I guess. We are able to communicate through our heads regardless of the distance.
Tell Nala I said hi, and that Damien and I will be talking until you guys are done.
She said almost teasingly. Yet I still felt like I needed to tell her what my human told me to say. She says hi to you. Also, Damien and her will be talking until we call for them again. Upon the remark, Nala raised an eyebrow slightly. Regardless of that, I lifted my finger up to her and said, Give me a moment, sweetheart, to finish my quick discussion with Abby, and I will be all yours again. Without seeing her reply, I turned myself away and finished the conversation within my head. How did you even send this condom up here? You're not in the same room as me.
No, I'm not. But I am in Damien's room, which is located below you. I heard the footsteps and slight creaking of the floor as you walked. That's how I knew. But when that lovely thought of yours echoed in my head, I knew that I could fetch for one of Damien's condoms. Then, using my intangibility, I threw it up into the air to send it into your room, where I believe it is currently in your hand because you picked it up. Am I correct?
Well, yes, you are. But you're still forgetting the fact that I am a demon and she is human. This would never be allowed in hell. Also, I haven't had sex in years. I don't even know if it's different in the demon world or not.
Darius, that doesn't matter. If I was able to have sex for the first time with Damien and enjoy it, I have no doubt you can too. Also, since when did you give a crap about what the rules of hell are? You defy all of them to begin with. You are devoted to your wife and finally have the chance to reconnect with her like the old days. Screw the laws of hell because you weren't meant to be down there anyway. Do whatever you want.
Abby, what has gotten into you? Why are you encouraging this so much? I said, trying hard not to smile at her comments.
Because if you were my wingman for when I was getting with Damien, then I am going to be your wingwoman to get with Nala. I will keep your son busy and away so that we won't hear anything. Now I order you, as my protector demon, to fuck the shit out of your wife. I'll be a thought away whenever you need us again.
All right. I'm breaking this connection now. Goodbye. After that, I turned myself around, still holding the condom in my hand.
Are you done talking with Abby?
Nala asked. Yes, I am. Again, I am sorry about that and for not warning you I could do that. I said, moving myself to sit on the bed again. Just a 21-year-old girl trying to play wing woman for a demon.
What on earth are you talking about?
She asked with a chuckle.
Where did that condom come from?
You wouldn't believe me if I told you that Abby threw it through the floor underneath us. But it isn't like we are going to be needing it anyway. There are more things we need to talk about. As I gazed back up towards my wife, she suddenly had her hand behind my head again and pulled me in for another kiss. This time, as our lips collided, the tension between us grew stronger. Like wildfire spreading, the passion of the kiss made my brain forget every thought or reason it had towards everything. It was overtaken by the lustful woman that I longed to have back for years. the only person that could bring my true feelings to life and make them flourish into something more. Nala Stone knew how to activate the sexual rise between us, and even though we were separated for over a decade, she still filled me with pleasure. As the kiss began to escalate, I pulled away once more in shock and almost breathless. However, before I could say anything, Nala responded to me.
I don't care that you're a demon now. I somehow have you back, and I plan to take back what is rightfully mine. I will have no regrets having sex with you, and I will have you right now. I love you, Darius, and I never stopped loving you. Show me how much you missed me, and tell me the same.
I love you too, and I have never stopped, I said, practically giving into her demands like a servant. Then in the next moment, Nala climbed onto my lap and sat herself right on my pelvis. Her warmth was pressed into my body like a heated blanket while I stared straight into her eyes. For once again, the height difference between us shrank as she sat upon my lap. At the moment, she was only a few inches shorter than me, yet I was taken away from my reflections as she initiated the kiss session between us. My mind finally gave in and threw away every ounce of control. Nala has made it abundantly clear that she wants me regardless of what I am. She wants to be reminded about how much I love her while fulfilling her repressed urges that have been locked away for years. Now was my time to deem myself worthy of her love once more, and I started by sliding my hands down her sides to hold her waist. However, as my mind kept slipping away, my right hand placed itself upon her ass cheek to hold her up against me. The left glided to her mid-back for support. My stomach tied in knots as new feelings began to overwhelm me. Suppressed sensations that I haven't been able to release resurfaced and made themselves known. As the kiss pressed on, I could feel my cock stiffen and rise in my pants, my fiery blood flowing into it and making my sexual arousal abundantly clear for my wife to feel. The kiss between us intensifying and growing more demanding as the lost love was rekindling itself. Eventually, I began to lose control of my arms as they began to unbutton her light blue blouse. Smooth as can be, they each unlooped from their designated places, and I was able to slip the shirt off her shoulders. It fell to the ground with grace, and more of her skin was exposed, allowing me access to explore her torso. Without a moment's pause, I slowly moved my lips down her face and made a trail of kisses down to the crook of her neck. With each one, Nala let out a small exhale as if her skin became sensitive to my touch. Yet this was only one way of me showing her my love. It was only the start. For as I delicately began to latch onto her flesh and made contact with the sweet spot, she gasped slightly from the amount of pleasure while arching herself into me. This was one of the many actions that I recalled her liking that sent her body towards the mountain of pleasure. Upon the second kiss, she grabbed a handful of my hair on the back of my head, and a slight moan escaped her mouth. Along with that, she arched again, rubbing against my pants where my cock was hard and throbbing for her. A shudder traveled through my body for a moment as I was regaining myself to continue on. Planting another kiss on her neck, she arched again and eventually pulled my head away with determination.
Darius, I know you remember what that spot does to me,
she said with faded breath. I let out a low chuckle from her comment. I wasn't really trying to. However, it made her body react again as her thighs squeezed mine to try and tame her sensitive clit. I do. I just wanted to hear your moans within my ear first before getting right down to it. At that response, Nala smiled at me lustfully and brought her hands to my chest. Then, within a second flat, she used all her might to push me back onto the bed. Surprisingly, it worked. My back was now laying upon the comforter while my wife was towering over me. Still sitting upon my pelvis, her stream of black wavy hair crashed onto her shoulders while her eyes glared at me with desire. I could see the lustful flame in her eyes, the urgency of wanting me for her all. The power that she held in her hand was unknowing to her, but she was like my master, and I was the puppet. There was no resistance coming from me, only sweet obligation to obey her orders. So as I laid still, waiting for her instructions, she spoke softly.
I think it's time I explore your body. Do you mind?
Without saying a word, I nodded my head in agreement. From there, she gently led her fingers to my shirt and began to loosen the buttons. My breath was insanely fast while anticipation took a hold of me. At this point, I was mindless. My wife was unbuttoning my clothes and showing her boldness to screw a demon. Regardless of the consequences, she was going the full mile and taking her sweet time with it. As I felt the top fabric of my shirt collapse to the sides of me, I gazed up at my wife to see her baffled expression, and I knew exactly why. Her precious eyes were filled with the sight of my gradient skin. They moved along my torso, examining the red outer ring, while it faded to magenta towards my abdomen. Her smirk went away, as she was caught off guard by the change. That was when I thought the mood was destroyed. So I lifted my hands and placed them on my stomach to obstruct the view. I know. I'm a bigger freak having this kind of skin color. I'm sorry I forgot to warn you about it first. I understand if the mood has shifted. However, that was where I was extremely wrong. For as that apology spewed out of my mouth, Nala grabbed a hold of my arms just below my wrist cuffs as best as she could and lifted them off my body. Confused as to what she was doing, I was caught off guard as she swiftly slid her ass onto my stomach and pushed my arms to pin them up by my head forcefully. Taken aback by her action, I instantly stared into her eyes again to find they were determined and on fire with excitement. If I wanted to, I could break her hold, as I knew I was stronger than her. However, I was hypnotized by her beauty and her intimidation that I stayed in place.
I said I wanted to explore your body. Don't ruin this for both of us because of your insecurities. Be still and quiet, darling. I won't cower before you, nor will I bite. Well, hard, anyway.
A jolt of arousal bursted through me at that remark. My breath was instantly taken away, and I had barely any time to catch it before she began to kiss my lips again. After a moment or two of that, she moved her lips away from my mouth and started to trail down my body. Except she wasn't going towards the crook of my neck. Even if she wanted to place her tender lips upon it, it was blocked by the spiked collar that was wrapped around the base of my neck. Yet she kept pulling herself down past the choker and down towards my chest. As her kisses made their way down, her hands let go of my forearms and traveled down to caress my sides. Her fingernails gently scraping my skin to make me shiver and squirm slightly. Regardless of that, her lips went further down my torso as I could eventually feel her kissing each one of my abs that appeared on my stomach. When I was alive, I wasn't the most muscular or fit person ever. I was still considered healthy within a medical perspective, but I wasn't as built as I was now. That being said, the abs that were gifted the touch of Nala's lips were new to her. That also results in a new experience for me, and for some reason I was loving every moment of it. There was an angel that was gifted to me, and she filled my senses to the point my head clouded with the thoughts of her. Nala was the only one I wanted, and she possessed my mind to turn it against me. I was lost in the sweetness and the memories that flooded into recognition. She was a generous lover to me, and I would get down on my knees to praise her if I were given the chance. Everything happening seemed surreal, a figment of my imagination that could only exist in my mind. Yet the constant touch of my wife was enough to keep telling me it wasn't. And it was within that second I felt another rush of arousal overpower my body that made me groan and awaken from my hypnosis state. As I lifted my head up to see what happened, I realized that my wife somehow unbuckled my belt and pants. Yet that wasn't what was shocking me the most. While I was in my clouded headspace, she pulled my pants and underwear down to my knees, exposing my erection. Her right hand was placed on my shaft, while a smile brushed her face again. My girth was in her grasp, and there was nothing I could do to escape it, even though I didn't want to. As she had my attention, She spoke again.
Tell me that this is the first erection you had within your demon life. Say that I am the only woman who has done this to you.
It is, Nala. I have never wanted anyone but you. I already told you I am devoted to you, my wife, my love, my forever. I said, practically panting like a dog.
I know. I just wanted to hear it again.
At that remark, she quickly stroked my cock to make me squirm beneath her again. Another groan escaped my mouth as more pleasure built up within me. Yet that was another distraction. For once the wave was over and I was able to stop groaning, I glared up again to see the condom Abby threw up here was now around my throbbing penis.
Sit up, Darius.
Nala demanded, getting off of me.
I want you to face me.
Upon her command, I lifted myself up as I sat bare in front of her. I was vulnerable at this moment, but this woman deserved to see me like this. Every instruction and demand would be met if it meant I could please the woman of my dreams. Also, not to mention, I would do anything at this point to settle my emotions and please the urge to fuck my wife. As I kept breathing hard with lust, she placed herself in front of me again and grabbed my hands. She guided them to her pants, insinuating for me to start taking them off. I did as I was mentally told, but not before bending down to kiss her again. The fiery passion between us electrified the air, driving us towards each other, like opposite magnets, wanting to connect. Yet all I wanted to do was fill her with the sweet pleasure that could come from my cock. It was aching at this point to be inside her, wanting to feel her warmth and wetness through the protection wrap around it, wondering what it would feel like to fuck Nala again with my alterations. Once her flesh had gained freedom from her pants and underwear, I moved my hands to her back to unclasp her bra. Still remembering my technique, it came undone within a second flat and fell to the ground as her torso and arms lowered once more to my hands. Then, as if it was forming a pattern, she broke the kiss a final time. This game that we were playing was agonizing and prolonging the relief we both needed. Yet upon her halt, I was able to see her naked body as a whole. She was as beautiful as I remember. Her hourglass figure exposing her wondrous curves, her breast perked while her nipples were taut, and her lovely pussy that was free of any pubic hair. It was like she was expecting me, yet all was just a happy coincidence. A smile appeared on my face as I saw her lovely figure, knowing that it was all mine and no one else had seen such exposure of her body. This was a sight that my eyes have only seen, and I wanted to keep it that way. After my dick would penetrate her vagina, she would be all mine. There would be no turning back. All rights to her body would be granted, and forever claimed by her demon husband, who would show his possession to the world. Like a jewel on a wedding band, as I was lost in those thoughts, Nala sneaked 2 fingers up to my chin and lifted my head up until we made eye contact again.
Do you like what you see?
She asked with dominance. Yes, very much, I replied back.
Good. Now instead of playing coy with me, how about you help me out? Lay back down and let me ride that cock of yours. Let me pleasure you until you explode. Take me within this strong form of yours and show your claim over me. Prove you don't want another man to screw around with me.
If anyone ever does, I said with a husky voice, then I will leave the imprint of this memory and make sure it haunts you. At that phrase, I immediately grabbed her by her hips and lifted her up as I reclined back once more. Holding her in midair was almost effortless. She was lighter than a feather within this form, so taking advantage, I teased her entry with the tip of my penis. Her muscles tensed under my grasp while she bit down on her bottom lip. Let's make sure we both understand one thing. After I fuck you, there is no turning back. You'll be past the point of return and will forever be tainted by a demon. Is that what you really want?
Yes, Darius,
she said, hardly breathing.
Why couldn't you bring that up sooner instead of prolonging this?
Because teasing leads to more pleasure. Patience leads to a better reward. Talking leads to distraction, so you won't expect when I will thrust into you. Immediately upon the last sentence, I powered her quickly onto my cock. At the sudden intrusion, she loudly gasped and grabbed a hold of my forearms again. This time, however, her fingernails were digging into my skin. As for me, her vagina wrapped around my girth like a warm rubber band, gripping me enough to feel how tight she was still, proving herself to never have been tainted by another man. She was mine, and now it was time to drill it into her brain. Slowly, I helped my wife move up and down while I worked my hips. With each completion of a stroke, Nala would vocalize herself with a shuddered breath or a slight moan, taking my cock like the good woman that she is. The tightness surrounding my shaft and tip rubbed against me and made my insides clench from the stream of arousal flowing into me. Eventually, the slow strokes were not good enough to send me higher within that state. So like any other time, I accelerated my speed enough to keep constant moans coming out of Nala's mouth. Eventually, her hips began to move along with mine and created the same rhythm, keeping the speed.
Oh, fuck.
She breathed. At her comment, I guided my eyes to watch her facial expression. Eyes closed, mouth agape, eyebrows scrunched together. Beauty at its finest. Knowing her body would finally work with me, I stopped my arm movements and kept them to stay in the air for Nala to use. She still gripped right into my forearms, and I refused to remove them from her grasp. Mostly because my mind was submerged in the moment while my eyes were hypnotized by her boobs bouncing with her body. The entire sight was pleasurable to see, and sent me even higher towards climax. However, I still allowed her to control the speed of our movement, at least for a minute or two.
Darius, I need release.
She whimpered. What do you say? I teased back just as breathless, yet still somewhat demanding.
Please.
Please what? I want to hear more than that.
Please, Darius, I want to come and surrender.
Good girl. Upon her plea, I took control of her movement again and began to speed up once more, slamming her into me like a sledgehammer pounding down at a railroad stake. With each impact, she moaned loudly while I tried holding mine in. The sexual cries from my wife filled me to the brim and made me lose control once more as I spoke out loud. I love you, Nala Stone. A large thrust came about and stopped her right at the bottom of my cock. I would do anything for you. Another slam of pleasure. I did this for us. And another. You are my darling, and nothing will change that. After that, it was quickened thrusts that drove us to climax, each one making both of us cry out in moans and ecstasy. Nala kept calling my name, and finally, we both found orgasm and released. Upon the ending of our session, she let go of my arms and collapsed onto my chest. Our sweat mixed together while we breathed heavily with satisfaction. I pulled her body up more to have her closer to my face, and my cock slipped out of her as cum splashed onto my body. We both groaned from the action, but we stayed still, enjoying each other's embrace. Silence fell between us as we were coming down from our pleasure high. My arms were wrapped around her while my left hand was upon the side of her head, my fingers playing with the black strand of hair, remembering how it used to be blonde. Regardless, she was my Mona Lisa. No traits of her would ever be disgraced in my eyes. And as we laid still in the quiet room after a minute or two, I peered up to find my wife had fallen asleep within my arms. I left her be and just basked within the moment, reveling in what I just did and recalling the memories of it. My wife, my angel that was gifted to me, was now corrupted. She had chosen her fall when she chose her desire over purity. That halo of hers had turned into demon horns, and I was quite confused on how to feel about it. Yet there was a for sure answer to what I was feeling. Love. and happiness. For once in my life, I was truly happy and not faking any of it. Realizing that amazing fact, I began to smile and closed my eyes in extreme happiness, holding my wife and knowing I had my family back.
This has been Chapter 24, Reconnection, from the book The Forbidden Truth. Tune in to the next video for Chapter 25. Thanks for listening.